This is a WWN Publishing Group recording. Copyright 2017, all rights reserved. This is an abridged version of Night Takes Pawn, Book 1 of the Red Knight series by Martha Sweeney, to make the story appropriate for all listeners on YouTube. Read to you by the author. If you want to read the complete story, you can find the ebook or paperback online. Links are provided below in the description. Chapter 24, Night. Red had already been acting funny this whole past week, but she had been in a daze since I left her in the private room with Jagger's main group to deal with some shit. I'm not sure what it's all about, but she seems even more on edge since Jagger requested for her to kill again tonight. She seems cold, distant, and even troubled. I ask her what's up, but she just looks at me and shakes her head. I do find out, by way of Jagger boasting about Red's latest victim, when he decides to tell the story to the whole group in the VIP room. It apparently happened not too long ago. I watched Red carefully as Jagger shared explicit details about who and how Red killed the kid. I shouldn't really call him a kid since he wasn't much younger than me. He was less experienced when it came to being one of the Sovereign's infiltrators, but not by much. There's got to be a leak for him to have been brought to Jagger's attention so quickly. I remember him from training before I was sent here. He was good, better than most who were training to be sent on the same mission. Red's gaze stays on the floor most of the time as if something happened, something that Jagger perhaps didn't see or is purposefully leaving out. I study everyone who's present and I notice an extra spark in Breaker's eye. As the night continues on, I pick up some extra tension with Red and most of it seems to be aimed at Breaker. The two of them have been eyeing each other every so often. Red's got the look of death in her eye, death as in Breaker's death. That Decker better not have touched her, or else I'm going to dack and kill him before she gets the chance. "What's wrong, Red?" I ask, when we enter our bedroom about 3 hours later after Jagger shared Red's recent killing conquest. She ignores me. "Red!" I call a little more sternly than I mean. She looks at me, but doesn't reply. "Did he hurt you?" I ask, lifting my hand to her face. Red blocks my arm, not letting me touch her. "What's wrong?" I press, concerned by her behavior. Red remains quiet, but shakes her head. I don't push, realizing that she needs some time. The two of us get ready for bed, and I'm under the covers before Red this time. I have my hands behind my head as I watch her, trying to figure out what's different. By the time she's finished, Red slips in the bed, keeping as much of a distance from me as possible. The thud of a fist slamming against our door wakes me, making me dart to a sitting position. Red's reaction is practically the same just a few seconds later. I mumble under my breath when I check the clock and notice that we've only slept for about 4 hours. "I got it," I inform her, getting up. I stride to the door, not caring that I'm naked. "What?" I grumble as it opens. "There's some shit we need to take care of," Ronan tells me. "What kind of shit?" I check, still waking up. "Not the good kind," he tells me. I nod. "Pack some things, including extra clothes," he informs. "Jack," I groan. "Be out front in 20, he directs. "Yeah," I sigh, 20. It figures that the shitheads would come banging on my door when they did. I knew shit can happen at any time of day, but not this early. The sun is barely even up. It hadn't even been 20 minutes before they came back. Red and I are usually up several hours before everyone else, but to be woken up not long after we got back is infuriating as hell. I make it down to the truck with 2 minutes to spare, only to find most of the crew isn't coming along. Apparently, there are 2 different issues to take care of, so we're splitting up. Rex, Ash, and Steele are with me, while Breaker, Ronan, Kane, and Arson are heading in the other direction. I start throwing equipment in the back of the truck, taking my frustration out on it rather than someone. I've got a serious case of blue balls from not having enough time to masturbate, and I'm not in the mood to have to go handle a few people because they failed to do their jobs. "Easy, Knight," Breaker says, walking past me. "You just might set off a grenade or something." "Deck off," I huff, shoving the last bag in the back before closing the door. "What's got your panties twisted?" Breaker asks with a grin. "Piss off," I say. "What? Is Red not as satisfying for ya?" he beats. I glare at him, but I don't comment. I know he's trying to stir me up. "I could set her straight for you," Breaker states. "Stay the dack away from her," I demand. "I'm just offering," Breaker replies, amusing himself. "She's off limits," I declare, wanting him to know to keep his distance. All right, Breaker returns, holding up his hands. I get in the truck after loading another bag of supplies in the back.
I watch Breaker through the corner of my eyes until our vehicles go in separate directions. I don't trust that Dagger. The ride with Rex, Ash, and Steele is pretty quiet. The two who sit in front chat and joke to help pass time, while the other two of us nap in the back. We swap out our seats after a few hours to give them a break. These three are pretty cool compared to some of the others, so I don't mind a long day of work. What's the issue, I ask at some point once we're all up and almost to our destination. Not quite sure, Steele replies. Word is that there's a challenge at the distillery with one of the tenants and the shipments. What kind of a challenge? I inspect. Don't know, Ash states. What do we know? I search. Breaker said that we're supposed to talk with Mr. White when we get there, Rex comments. I nod, knowing that Breaker can be a dick about telling us what's really going on. The three of them talk some more, eventually revealing some of what they overheard between Jagger and Breaker. I prefer to hear everything directly from Jagger. Things are always less complicated and less dramatic that way. Breaker is definitely a person who enjoys drama. I've caught him informing some of the guys one thing when the issue is something completely different. Anytime Breaker does that, he's either pissed at someone or working to screw the rest of us while staying in Jagger's good graces. Breaker always denies telling us false information. No one bothers to challenge him since two guys, that I know of, have ended up dead because of it. It takes about another 40 minutes of driving to arrive. The building is quiet. There isn't anyone outside other than some guards at the gate. They let us pass once they recognize us, but the boys and I remain suspicious. The guards appear a little apprehensive, and it looked like they might have had weapons with them. I wonder if their facility has been broken into. We pull around to the far entrance, one that we've used a few times since I've been working for Jagger. No one is there waiting for us, which unsettles me a little. Once we're inside, it doesn't take long to get a worker to find Mr. White for us. We're led to the office, and I instruct the guys to wait outside per our customary routine. Ah, Mr. Knight, Mr. White greets as I enter. I nod and close the door. Mr. White. I'm sure Jagger has sent a threat, he guesses. Not really, I return. Really? He asks, sounding surprised. Just checking in, I comment. He's not upset, Mr. White asks. He's not happy, I reply. I can't blame him, Mr. White returns. Production has been down since equipment has been breaking regularly. So I've heard, I confirm. Has anyone who knows how fixed the challenge? Several have tried, but haven't succeeded, he shares. Mind if my boys? Not at all, Mr. White interrupts. I nod, getting up. I open the door and call, Ash! Yeah, he answers. Take the boys and see what you can help fix, I instruct. Sure thing, Ash returns. I turn, close the door, and sit back down across from Mr. White. You're not going to help them, Mr. White inspects. I'm to ask about the other supplies, I state. Yes, Mr. White sighs. I can't do anything to speed that up. You know our limitations with fresh water, healthy soil, and functioning equipment. I nod. Haven't many died, Mr. White asks, lighting a cigarette. That should take the burden off of the need for so much of the drugs. Not according to Jagger, I comment. Mr. White takes a deep pull on his addiction and lets it out slowly. Like I said before, Jagger has bodies for an army. He even has weapons. However, his ammunition is limited since no one is mining or making more. Plus, the Sovereigns have more powerful weapons than the old, beat-up ones Jagger has that are from the war. Jagger understands that power with weapons will go only so far. Plus, he or his man can't just kill anyone who is not agreeable to his wants and desires, which is why he uses something else. I knew many of the populace seemed docile, but I was surprised to learn a while ago that Jagger drugs the water and liquor, all in effort to keep people in line. It's laced with something to help keep the population down. Jagger isn't one to take chances, not with the number of riots that occurred the years prior to his reign. Beyond the fact that 60% of the planet is a living hellhole, resources have always been scarce, especially since the last war. Many of the supplies and facilities that manufactured everything were destroyed during some of the riots, which is why Jagger rules the way he does. He's becoming desperate, not just to feed his people their magic pills each day that keeps them manageable and ignorant of the truth. I know why Jagger has increased the requested production of said resources. He plans to contaminate the water supply of the other sovereigns. Not only is Jagger concerned with the growing rumors about the sovereigns seeking to terminate him and his power, but he has this ever-growing need to control more. Even if the sovereigns weren't trying to overthrow him, he'd still want to rule them. I learned early on which bunches of supplies contain the drugs and which don't. There's a tiny mark on the bottles to indicate those without it, which are the ones Jagger has in the house and for his inner circle. There are 2 sets of drugs that are given to the rest of the population. There's one particularly for the men and women who work less closely with Jagger. They get a milder version of the drug. The more potent version is for the masses, which is put into the water system. Every building in Jagger's land receives such water, except his estate. Jagger is smart, smarter than most, but the man's comprehension with reality is becoming skewed. I'm certain he doesn't realize that positive growth in many areas of his domain need to occur in order for him to stay in power. The sovereigns know that. They know that he's desperate, so they're cutting off his resources little by little. From what I know, if the sovereigns wanted to subdue Jagger, it would be as simple as tainting Jagger's direct water supply. The tricky part would be bringing in enough of the drugs, unnoticed, and hooking it up to Jagger's separate water source. It sounds simple, but it's not when you've got armed guards patrolling the grounds at all times. Can you dilute it? I ask. Pardon, Mr. White replies. I know the challenges you face, I admit. I also know the challenges Jagger faces. Can you dilute it or use a substitute of some kind? He's becoming more desperate, Mr. White states with a questioning glance. I don't confirm or deny his accusation. Can you alter it slightly to still have the same effect, yet be what Jagger requires? I'm sure we can come to some kind of an arrangement, Mr. White replies with a grin, tapping the end of his cigarette into the tray. I nod appreciation. You're smarter than what's-his-name, Mr. White professes. I do my best to refrain a snort. Breaker? I ask, knowing that Breaker is the one who always handled Mr. White until now. He nods. Many men, like him, think that muscle and force will get things done. Not all men understand the subtleties of business, I reply. I agree, Mr. White says, with a smile. It appears, though, that you are one of them. I try, I admit. There's only so much you can do once you've killed everyone. I like you, Mr. White chuckles. I'm sure we're going to get along very well. I offer a half smile. There are rumors flying around, Mr. White adds. I lift a brow in question. Rumors that Jagger is losing his control, he states. From who? I inspect. No one in particular, he replies. I've just heard whispers. Thinking about challenging him, I prod, testing his resolve. Heavens no, Mr. White chuckles. I like how things are for me. I don't want any of that to change. However, if someone is working to push Jagger out, that does concern me and my business. I understand, I return, hoping he'll keep talking. Have you heard of the rebellion? He checks. We have, yes, I confirm. We, he says. So, Jagger has heard, which means the rumors must be true. Wouldn't know, I return passively. I've heard a few say that other sovereigns are restricting certain resources to Jagger as well, he continues. I don't comment. That they know he's desperate and are using that against him, Mr. White adds. There have been speculations, but there's nothing tangible, I state, knowing that Jagger doesn't want this information known by anyone. So, they are testing him and his control, Mr. White assumes, even though I have denied his accusation. When I don't say anything, he adds, Well, I guess we'll have to wait and see how the next few rounds of the game are played then, won't we? 10 minutes later, I'm escorted to the guys who are fixing some of the decrepit equipment. It takes all 4 of us working together for several hours to get part of it working. We take a lunch break, needing fuel and rest before we finish tackling the challenge. There's a good chance we can fix it and be back tonight. Mr. White's workers watch us from time to time, and there's one in particular who's trying to understand what and how we're fixing the machine. As we solve the one main concern, we learn of several other challenges that are going on in the factory which directly influence the supplies being delivered on time to Jagger. We break up into 2 groups, handling the small things that need attention. By around 9 at night, the 4 of us are sharing 2 rooms in town. We return to the factory early the next morning and resume our tasks. Around 8 at night, the 4 of us manage to finally have everything fixed and completely working, but we still need to find or fabricate a few new parts or else the same issues will happen again. We stop somewhere to eat and relax before making the trip back. Right as we're 20 minutes from the mansion, my phone buzzes in my pocket. Yeah, I greet. Night, it's Ronan, the voice says. We're on our way back, I inform. How far away are you? Ronan checks with an odd tone in his voice. Why, what happened? I inquire. It's Red, Ronan answers. I'll be there in 15, I confirm.
This is the end of this chapter. Thank you for listening. I hope you're enjoying the story so far. To read the full, unabridged version, you can find a link in the description below. To find out about new releases before the general public, be sure to subscribe to my newsletter. Also, to be notified when the next chapter is published, make sure you subscribe to my channel.